That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm going to change that tune when I'm back on top in June. That's life. And as funny as it may seem, some people get their kicks stomping on a dream. But I don't let them get me down, 'cause this fine old world, it keeps me spinning round. Well, I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, a poet, a pawn and a king. I've been up and down and over and out and lying low one thing. Each time I find myself flat on my face, I just pick myself up and get back in the race. That's life. Oh, you know I can't deny it. Many times I thought of quitting, baby, but my heart won't buy it. And if I didn't think it was worth one single try, well, I'd hop up on a big bird and let that fly. Well, I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, a poet, a pawn and a king. I've been up and down and over and out and I know one thing. Each time I find myself flat on my face, I just pick myself up and get back in the race. That's life. Oh, you know I can't deny it. Many times I thought of cutting out, but my heart won't buy it. And if there's nothing shaking, here comes this July. Well, I'm gonna hold myself in a little ball and die. Oh, it's life. And as funny as it may seem, some people get their kicks stomping on a dream. But I don't let them get me down, 'cause this fine old world, it keeps me spinning round.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. My name is James Cordiner. I'm the host this evening, every Saturday evening, of A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. My website is freeyourmindne.com. I hope you're watching there. If not, then get yourself over there every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and join the chat. Get in on the action. Tonight, I have with me this evening a couple of fine gentlemen who have a podcast of their own. Tonight, I'm joined by the gentleman from Psyop Cinema, and we are going to be discussing their findings and their ideas surrounding the Joker and his different forms in entertainment. And without further ado, let me bring in those gentlemen right now. We have Mr. Thomas Millary. And we have Mr. Brett. I don't know your last name, but that's okay. We don't need to if you don't want to. So how are we tonight, gentlemen? Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having us, James.
Yeah, thanks for having us, James.
Yeah, anytime. So yeah, introduce yourselves. I mean, you're new faces to my audience here, and tell us a little bit about your show and your mission statement with the show you guys do, and and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so our show, like you said, is Psyop Cinema, and we look at cultural engineering. We look at Hollywood mind control. We usually do this through a deep dives into particular directors' filmographies. Actually, we've been thinking about Joker stuff for a while on our show, on and off, because the first one director that we covered in depth was Christopher Nolan. And we've also done other ones like Zack Snyder or David Fincher. And we like to go through these particular directors movie by movie and just to kind of get the big picture at how these different voices fit within the overall mega psyop of Hollywood. But then sometimes we don't do directors, sometimes we do cuts. And after looking at the Joaquin Phoenix Joker film over the summer, we just found so much with the character of the Joker, the archetype of the trickster, and things, that a weird feedback loop of a spectacular crime and fiction reality that Brett will be saying a little bit more about in a second, that we've been lingering on Joker stuff for quite a bit. And we'll talk more about different aspects of that research. But yeah, we look at Hollywood, we look at themes of dissociation as it relates to cultural manipulation, to the occult, to transhumanism. That's what we do.
Awesome. We're hitting it off already, dude. You know, I did a quite a deep dive with my brother Ivan from Phoenix, Ivan Oyola Jr. He has got his own show, and we did about, and I told you this before, but in case anyone out there hasn't checked it out, check out that show by Ivan. Guy Next Door Speaks. You can find him on the One Great Work Network, and under the Creators tab, go over there, check out his stuff. And we did about almost 4 hours on just the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, directed by Todd Phillips. And I'll tell you, man, there's almost, it feels like there's no end. You feel like you watch it a million times and you find something new each time. And it's like, I'm having a tough time putting all the information in a condensed package with a nice little bow on it and saying, here, have it, you know, but I'm glad you guys are here to talk about it, man. So let's get it going. What's up?
Yeah, totally. I mean, so it's one of the challenges of beginning the conversation is, I think, part of the nature of this thing. Do you start with fiction? Do you start with the movies, right? Or do you start with reality? Do you start with where do you start with reality? Do you start with the deep politics angles? Do you start with, the assassination of John Lennon, or, the assassinations in the 60s? Because this is all part of the feedback loop that the Joker is exploiting here. So, I mean, I guess the point of departure for me was, I've been a huge film buff since I was a teenager, and Martin Scorsese, obviously one of my favorite directors, just an absolutely foundational director to the new Hollywood aesthetic, and Paul Thomas Anderson or Spike Lee or all these people are really pretty much nothing without this thing that Scorsese like invented with Mean Streets and other movies. I mean, anyway, I'm kind of gushing. I mean, he is just super innovative as a director. And so when the Joker came out, I didn't know what to expect in the theater, and I immediately saw they were using the old like Warner Brothers logo, and like, we're in this post-cinema era, and I mean, I think most cinema is just total garbage. It's not even like cinema anymore. It's like some kind of third generation imitation. And this actually, weirdly, even though it is itself kind of an imitation, it looks very real, and it's trying to recreate this period around 1981, right? Isn't that when it's set? 1981. That's the key year to this cycle. And I read critics who, it was commonly compared. Taxi Driver was brought up over and over and over. And yeah, there's some obvious references to Taxi Driver, but no, the plot is like a reimagining and reworking of The King of Comedy, and that got mentioned like as an afterthought, right? But so that was the first thing that kind of clued me in. There was something really weird and interesting going on here, and so that sort of enters the feedback loop, because Taxi Driver. Okay, this is where do you begin? You've been with Taxi Driver or Wallace? I say you begin with Wallace, because I mean, I was just studying today. I mean, I've neglected to go into this angle of the conspiracy, but I mean, the Wallace killing is, the officials are, is completely impossible, right? There's too many bullets, too many victims, too many wounds for only Bramer, right, to have done it. And you can go down the Bramer rabbit hole, but that seems to be part of, people like E. Howard Hunt and stuff, their names come up, and other usual suspects who are part of the whole, conspiracy cycle of the 60s, right, with Oswald and Sirhan Sirhan and the rest of it. But but Bremer is very important because his motive supposedly is just fame. He just wants fame, and he has a diary, right, that he supposedly published, which some people think E. Howard Hunt may have written this diary. So he's the first guy that's the great fame seeker. He's going to publish this diary, and then enter Paul Schrader, who writes a script supposedly based on the diary before it was published, even though the movie came out afterward. So Schrader writes this movie Taxi Driver that's supposedly capturing the psychology of this dangerous loner weirdo who can commit political assassinations for no reason at all, without warning. The fame thing isn't quite in there, although it's interesting because it's already there with Bremer. It is there with Travis Bickle. Sure, he wants a kind of respectability of some kind, but it's not quite. He doesn't want celebrity in the same way that Rupert Pupkin does. Okay, so that movie, when it comes out immediately, and this is kind of like not quite down the memory hole, but many people aren't aware of this. That movie was hugely controversial when it came out, Taxi Driver, and it was predicted by cultural critics, more or less conservative cultural critics, or just responsible liberal cultural critics, that this is going to inspire people to do stuff like that, because they understand monkey see, monkey do. If nothing else, you put this stuff up to people, they're going to start imitating it, right? Is there no limit to the level of the psychopathology that we're going to put in the stream, besides the fact that they're sexualizing a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl, right? And that was, even Hollywood could still find that a little bit despicable. So the movie was very controversial. And then lo and behold, it inspires the killings, supposedly. This is John Hinckley Jr., who tries to assassinate Ronald Reagan, we're told, in 1980, in December of 1980. And Hinckley's defense, successful, his insanity defense, is that he'd seen the movie hundreds of times. He had developed a fixation identification with Travis Bickle. And then that had led to this like secondary fixation on Jodie Foster in real life. And he was confusing reality and fiction. He couldn't tell reality from fiction anymore. He was crazy. He was nuts. And he was doing this to impress Jodie Foster. That's why he went to shoot Ronald Reagan, of course. I mean, he's crazy, so we just all accept that. But as you probably know this, James, right? I mean, John Hinckley Jr. was an associate of the Bush family, of the vice president's family.
Yeah.
We can go deeper into that, but this is not a lone wolf. This is somebody who probably knows the vice president. Okay, right? And so, and then 3 months later, you have Mark David Chapman, also supposedly just seeking fame, who kills John Lennon. You have the Catcher in the Rye thing we get into, connecting both of them, but then jump forward, and then you have a year later, and you have the King of Comedy. And Martin Scorsese, now who made the movie that inspired this crime, is now making a movie that's reacting, right, to these movies. And he seems to pull this off with impunity, right, without ever being questioned about what he's doing here. And we get into the King of Comedy, right, and just the predictive programming and the level of it. So there's an understanding by now that there's a feedback, there's understanding on the inside within the cultural creators circles, within the cultural manager circles, that there's a feedback loop here that we can play off of, right? You put stuff out there, it inspires acts, right? And then you can react to it and program people to. And this, if this isn't getting too weird and too far afield for your audience, right? What I think is going on here, to cut to the chase, why feedback loops? Why have conspiracy to push the feedback loops along and grease the wheels and keep it spinning? It has to do with cybernetics, right? And this is the precursor to MK Ultra. And cybernetic theory was this idea, the human is essentially a computer. And if you want mind control, you view the human like a computer. And this is a little crude, but one of the basic, it's right there, like, the Wikipedia article on cybernetics, like in the first sentence, if not first or second sentence, it's about feedback loops and algorithms, right? And you have an input, there's an output, you change the input and that's how you control the system, through feedback loops. So that's what I think is going on with a feedback loop like the Joker. There's many, many other ones. We're seeing it. Look at the predictive programming stuff with the Ohio spill and so on. But I think that introduces it. I don't want to spill all the beans here, but yeah, I think the feedback loops are about mass mind control and manipulation. Yeah.
Yeah, you are hitting the nail on the head with that one. That is absolutely what is going on, And even before Joker came out, there were news stories running upon, approaching the release of the movie, and the story was, is this going to inspire violence? Because the previous Batman installment which was The Dark Knight Rises, we saw that incident with James Holmes, and he was dressed as the Joker. Allegedly was a lone gunman in the movie theater. For anyone that doesn't know or doesn't remember, but that was something that people that the media was trying to raise awareness of. I remember that and being like, that's thinking to myself, that's a load of bullshit. They're trying to see if they can put that idea into somebody's head to go and do this, and this is what kind of set me on the path of wondering just what is the intention of the or what is the inspiration of this fascination of this Joker character. And I have many friends who maybe not many is not the right word. I have a few friends who have in the past been very obsessed with the Joker, quoting the Joker, thinking that he's the coolest. And then, even when that movie Suicide Squad came out, all of the females that were obsessed with Harley Quinn and wanted to dress up like him, and the memes you would see on the internet about how like Harley Quinn, oh, I got to find me a man like Harley Quinn's got the Joker. It's like, well, no, you want an abusive you want to be abused? Is that what you want? Do you want to develop dissociative identity disorder? Like, what do you want? Like dependent personality disorder? What are you trying to, what are you saying? You don't even know what you're saying. And it just always struck me as very odd, the fascination around this psychopath. And of course, like many others, you don't get many good representations of the Joker character on the big screen. You got the cartoons that came out through the last few decades, and then what? Before that, it was Jack Nicholson. In our lifetimes, it was Jack Nicholson, and then Heath Ledger was the big one for guys like around our ages. I'm not sure how old you guys are, but I don't imagine you were very, very old when Jack Nicholson played the Joker. I know I wasn't. I probably wasn't even born yet.
I saw it in the theater. Yeah, I'm 40. I saw it as a kid in the theater. Or no, I saw it on VHS. I don't know if I saw it in the theater. I saw the second one. Anyway, the second Batman. I shouldn't have seen that one in the theater. I was probably even too young for that. But I saw that in the theater.
Well, good. I mean, good. You have that memory as a kid when it was new. But yeah, I saw it on VHS when I was a kid too. I just wasn't around when it first came out. I was born the same year as its release. But yeah. But in any case, like I have seen this development of this fascination about the Joker, and it's just like, okay. And even as an anarchist myself, the association of anarchy and the Joker has been made in the past, and it's always kind of troubled me because that's really not what real anarchy is. And this whole burn it down mentality. And then you see the rise of like Antifa, and the rise of like let's say what was it, Occupy Wall Street. And then that was like right after Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight came out, and then Occupy Wall Street starts, and then you see The Dark Knight Rises, and that's all about the class warfare that was built from during the Christopher Nolan series of Batman, which is like this class warfare type of theme heavily embedded in that trilogy, and even more heavily developed over the course of the last two movies of his trilogy. The first one was more psychological, in my opinion, and the last two were more like psychopaths and class warfare, especially Dark Knight Rises. And then when the Dark Knight Rises comes in, that incident out in Aurora, and then fast forward 7 years to Todd Phillips' Joker movie coming out. But I remember before, back to my original point, I remember before the movie was released that there were stories coming out about, well, could this movie inspire violence? And it was like, why are you even saying it? Why even just roll the film? Like it's always been odd to me. And then I saw the movie, and people started painting their faces like Joaquin Phoenix, and the Heath Ledger paint went away, and the Joaquin Phoenix paint came in, and it's just like, oh my God, you people are just falling for it. It's like, to me, it always just seemed like this is kind of, it's kind of lame behavior, but I just never really put it together until like a couple of years ago. And I've been just thinking about it. And what made me think about this was like, what really made me think about it was watching Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movie and realizing that he's writing with one hand, puts it down, puts the pen down, takes a drag of his cigarette, and then picks the pen back up with the opposite hand, and then continues writing. And to me, that was the DID, the dissociative identity disorder, where he is literally like a fractured person. And when he's got something in his right hand, he's acting as Arthur, and when he's got something in his left hand, he's acting as Joker. And there's two psyches in one body, and you see it time and time again throughout the movie. And it's interesting that I think he's using a 38 special as well. That's something that I've just been kind of mulling around. I'm pretty sure that revolver is a 38 special. I could be wrong about that, but that's a pretty important gun. It's been used in many different incidents throughout history and assassination attempts and whatnot. It's been a pretty popular revolver throughout history. Anyways, that was what sparked this entire adventure of mine, kind of looking into the Joker, Todd Phillips' Joker movie, and how it's, to me, seems to be predictive programming, trying to get people to be psychopaths and to kind of identify with a psychopath, and people that have already been propped up as being mentally ill having their own hero. So it's not even about inspiring people to become psychopaths. It's the ones that have already been made through the system of, say, the DSM-5, the DSM-4, which is largely what our generations have been exposed to, the school systems, all of this stuff that has been programming people through the last few decades, and that honestly, more than not, it's a whole load of bullshit. But to me, this seems like the crescendo of what Hollywood's been trying to do with the psychopath programming. And yeah, I mean, think about it. You can see what many of the mental, in quotes, mental disorders, right, or mental diseases that are very, very common in modern society, run them up against this Joker movie. And more than not, you can see different instances throughout the movie where Joaquin Phoenix is portraying different mental disorders. So this is what I mean by when I say that they are trying to give the people that they have already created, have already made into psychopaths, their own hero. And then what do people like to do? They like to imitate the heroes that they see on television. And 2019, the movie came out. 2020, we see The Summer of Love. You know, that dude, George Floyd, got he got killed by the cops. And then next thing you know, there's cities all over the place, in at least the United States and even abroad. There are cities that are experiencing riots and real political upheaval because of obviously this fucking scamdemic that was going on. But we in the United States, Minneapolis was pretty, like, they torched that police station, which I can get behind. But they also destroyed their own neighborhoods too. Now, 2019, when the Joker came out, it was one of the biggest movies that was out at the time. How many people saw that and said, this is what you do in a situation where it's like, you know, when it's like riots and stuff like that? The programming goes in, it's already in there. So they think that it's like, oh, this is just what we do. And it's like, people don't realize that that's not their mind. The mind has been given to them through the movies and everything. But this movie in particular is huge for that. So I see that there are, I just know people in my own personal life who think that the Joker is just so cool. And it's like, I don't know. I push back on it. What do you guys think about that? How does what I said resonate with you?
It resonates a lot, and I think it's very good to push back on that, because the idea of just how cool of an anti-hero or villain is character, different iterations of the Joker can be, and how many people you relate to him, especially thinking about just how influential the Heath Ledger portrayal of the Joker was in The Dark Knight. Just how iconic this villain became. Just because something that we talk about at Psyop Cinema a lot is the idea of low intensity MK Ultra. Just kind of this universal trauma, like this low-grade traumatizing effect that so much of the Hollywood mega psyop is designed to have in the public. Now, with some of the things that that Brett was talking about earlier, and that you had referenced some of the predictive programming stuff, some of the feedback loop stuff with all these assassinations and things, that we see all these weird details related to this kind of lineage within fiction that has the Joker at the center of it. So there we see a lot of hints of high intensity MK Ultra, like the very particular individuals who are being tampered with for particular purposes, and creating these public spectacles in terms of these events. But then there's also, and this shouldn't be, I don't think, dismissed lightly, there's a real traumatizing effect to having something as satanic as the Heath Ledger performance, the excellent performance as the Joker, to be that culturally ingrained. That many people going, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. This is literally me. I want to be just like that. This absolute force of anarchy in the worst sense. This ontological chaos. This attempt to thwart human goodness at every turn. Just who's obviously the Ledger Joker is a more compelling character in a lot of ways than the Christian Bale Batman character. So a lot of people are coming away from that, just like really thinking that, okay, we get the ending, and also the fact that with the end of The Dark Knight, that the only way that the movie kind of props up Batman at the end is because we have the Joker, this master manipulator character that Nolan is obsessed with and comes up in so many of his films. And then the cool thing Batman does at the end is to participate in a noble lie, to engage in this mass deception of the public for the greater good. And so still the Joker's still cooler, but the hero's kind of cool because he's engaging in mass scale deception as well. But I think that really, just like with not just with the Joker, but with all kinds of other villains and anti-heroes that Hollywood props up, to be cool to, especially for young men who are cinephiles and stuff like that. They're the ones who are going to be saying, oh my gosh, the Joker is literally me. Tyler Durden is literally me. Alex from A Clockwork Orange is literally me. And the Alex example is interesting because Brett wasn't Arthur Bremer, partially inspired by Alex as well. I think so.
Yeah. So right, and in his journal, supposed journal, I believe, or at least in something that's been published, he writes that he felt, basically was egged on by the movie and felt a direct identification, and then wrote,
Right.
more whatever,
Yeah.
kill under it.
He was
He also
egged on
used
by
the
the movie,
38.
and then, right. And then of course both, I think, Nolan and Ledger talked about Alex in from Clockwork Orange being a big inspiration for that iteration of the Joker in The Dark Knight. So you have just decades and decades of people seeing these horrific acts of violence, and then that just being or of psychological violence, of just this real darkness, and then just people taking that, all these other earlier foundations for human and stability individually and on a civilizational level. You have Hollywood and corrosive forms of art coming in and displacing all this other stuff. And this is why I think the Joker is such a centerpiece to so much of this, because there's something a little bit maddening about film as an art form in general. Just art can be very redemptive, of course, and imagination, it can be beautiful and life-giving, but of course it can be very dangerous. It's so powerful. But then with movies, with filmmaking, with Hollywood of art form, you have kind of a natural breakdown of our ability to mark the boundaries between fiction and reality, just because films are so dreamlike, and there can be a natural tendency to think, oh, the stuff on the screen, like I'm dreaming this is my creation, or the actors and characters we see so much then that they enter our lives in ways that we often don't even thinking about. So this blurring of director, actor, character, viewer all happens. And so the feedback loop extends to some of this. You can say this is the technology itself is dangerous and maybe driving the movie. And sometimes we can point to individual human actors and groups who are furthering the technology to make it worse. And there's kind of a demonic feedback loop there. But with a character like the Joker, who fetishizes insanity, dissociation, blurring of boundaries. You mentioned the trickster archetype before we came on, and that there's something trickster-like about the medium of film in general, just generically speaking, and that can be leveraged towards, I think, some very, very dark ends. And so this kind of demonic clown as this assault, I think, on human sanity, human stability, like I said, on an individual civilizational level. The Joker is just really, really explicitly getting out some of the dynamics, both of the medium of film and the culture of Hollywood, and then of these particular psyops related to crime and espionage and the occult, and all these things are kind of happening in parallel with Hollywood continuing to poison mass culture.
Yeah, and echoing, if I could, I want to come back around to the blurring of boundaries and the archetype of the trickster and the relationship there and the Joker. But to back up just a second, how he got there, the making the Joker cool, making the Joker, edgy, right? So this is an instantiation. This is an example of, what we call in the show red pill programming. Okay, and red pill programming is really just reverse psychology, just used in sophisticated ways. Right, so everybody knows the red pill from the Matrix, but if you investigate kind of where this term comes from, the idea in there is you're taking the red pill, you get to see reality and how things really are. You can take the blue pill and you can go back to sleep. Well, in Total Recall, which is 90, right? So 1990. I mean, there's a use of the red pill in Total Recall where the main character, the Schwarzenegger character, he doesn't know whether he's in a dream or reality, and he's being offered this red pill to come out and see what it really is. But he actually doesn't know if the circumstance there is the red pill could also be a trap. It could be a trick, which the Matrix doesn't give you this notion that maybe Neo's being psyop by Morpheus, right? In other words, but it's there, but even before that, right before that, in fact, I discovered another use of this term, which, when you understand our analysis of it, is identical. And it's the interview that Charles Manson did with Geraldo Rivera in 1990. It was a televised interview. It was a big interview. And Geraldo asks him at one point, Charlie, why are there all these murders in the world? And I'll spare you the Manson impersonation, but basically Manson says, you're putting it up on TV, you're modeling it for people. And he goes, they didn't know what the red pill was till you told them not to take it. So, and let's not go over the Charles Manson process searching, but Manson knew what he was talking about, right? Because he came out of the same Psy-War labs that the sexual revolution was developed in. So Hollywood pushed the sexual revolution through red pill programming. It's pushed a lot of things through, we call drugs, it's pushed through red pill programming. I mean, I've talked a lot about the DARE program, and the DARE program is a great example of red pill programming. And even the dynamics, if you look up why the studies, all these Stanford and Harvard studies showed how it was increasing drug use among people in the program, the dynamics are understood. It was increasing a kind of curiosity, an edgy curiosity around it. So the same thing's going on. There's psyops going on around the figure of the Joker. And by the way, if we don't get any other chance to mention, I want to insert it here. People should watch this video that was put out by the 4th Psyops group out of Fort Bragg called All the World's a Stage. Have you seen this one? I mean, we should almost run it, right? It's using the archetype of the clown, right? To, oh God, it's creepy. So this is actually put out as a, who knows what it means, right? A recruiting ad. It's put out by this 4th Psy group, very sophisticated, showing kind of the clown dancing through everything. And so there we have the sort of deep.
Say it again. What's the name of the video again?
The video, I think it's called All the World's a Stage here. I have it up so I can give you some info. It's called, here it is. It's called Ghosts in the Machine, 4th Psyop group. 1.2 million views. It's on YouTube. It's the only thing they've ever put up, by the way. It's the only thing on their channel, the 4th Psyops group channel. And yes, this is actually a military formation of Fort Bragg. You can look it up. So yes, red pill programming, making it look cool, like making it look edgy, increasing identification. I want to say that the target. Okay, I think we're being a little too.
You want to watch it for the audience? We can watch it.
Yeah, let's do that, and then let's talk about the incel sort of angle of it. You want to play the video, Thomas? I mean, we can always cut it out. We don't have to. We can always cut it out. I mean, I don't. Okay.
Yeah, James. I think it's
As the world watches and listens in hope, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Wolves hiding nearby, whispering do or die around me. You say your last good night while I begin.
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target not the body, but the mind of the enemy.
The target of psychological warfare is against the enemy's mind.
It is words and ideas.
The ammunition used by Psy-war.
Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldier, and at the same time
is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
Gripping at my skin, the walls of night close in.
but the use of this force as an integral part of combat has now taken on new form.
As I wait to say my last goodbye.
These are the Psy-war soldiers.
So there you have it. Oh, I can't hear you.
Something else. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I had muted myself.
So I trust you caught the clown in the mirror. Looks like right out of the opening shot of Joker. The rest of the clown stuff. I mean, you get they're bragging that they did the overthrows in Ukraine and the rest of it. I mean, they're just bragging right in front of you. This revelation of the method, right? That is psychological warfare.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that is a piece of psychological warfare. It's not a recruiting video. It is, but so is Hollywood. So is all this other stuff that glamorizes intelligence culture in Hollywood. It's all part of a psyop. And here's just a bit of revelation of the method from the people that I suspect run a lot of this stuff, at least for DoD. So yeah, I mean, the incel thing. So yeah, we've talked to, yeah. So there's a general low intensity trauma based mind control that's going on. People are being assaulted with sex and violence and degeneracy and the rest of it. And they've demoralized us over a long period of time in order to do the same thing on a mass scale that they did in MK Ultra on a small scale. But specifically this particular psyop, the Joker psyop, we call it the Joker cycle. It's directed at what's now called the Incel, but that's really an cultural archetype that it's not it's distinctly American, I think you could almost argue, but it has its modern roots in Holden Caulfield. It has its modern roots in The Catcher in the Rye, hence the connection of The Catcher in the Rye to cases like Hinckley Jr. and Mark David Chapman, and the belief that The Catcher in the Rye was used in neurolinguistic programming. After all, its author, J.D. Salinger, was a psychological operations officer in World War II when he was writing the novel. So that's part of where that idea comes from. But we could talk about the evolution of this character, but now it is the incel, and that's why the Joker movie specifically is supposed to trigger incels, and that's why like the recent Batman movie is all about now it's the conspiracy theorist too, and that part of the cycle comes in with like the movie Conspiracy Theory, where the conspiracy theorist all of a sudden is now the dangerous one. He's going to be the guy you got to look out for. Okay, so they've added that to the archetype. It's kind of a patchwork in some ways. There's some extraneous elements of it, and it doesn't always follow. But it's all about this weird, isolated lone nut character who is his psychology is such that we can explain why he would do things when there's no motive to do it, and we can blame these crimes on him.
Yeah, the incel aspect of it is very important because it's like, and very obvious. It was obvious to me, the way that he fantasizes about the woman down the hall, to the degree in which he does, and the whole entire thing was a giant red flag to me when he just marches up to the door and just takes her.
So if I could just say, make a point, so that one of the trends is increasing dissociation. So if you look at Travis Bickle or if you look at Rupert Pupkin, they are dissociating. They are losing touch with reality. But you could say that there's like in King of Comedy, he has these daydreams, right? He can tell the difference between reality and he just kind of doesn't care anymore. It's not like he's not completely lost it, right? But Arthur, he's really lost it, right? He's completely psychotic. And our friend Jeff Schulenberger should have been like, he used this more academic way of putting it was, the preferred mode of the subject in our culture. Yes, they're spreading crazy. So that's part of the red pill programming, popularizing psychosis. They're spreading crazy. They're spreading insanity. And then Harley Quinn, that's the female equivalent to it. So women are crazy too. And men can be crazy. We can all be crazy. And that's the preferred mode of the subject. That and being psychopathic and being autistic. Those are the three modes of the subject now. And that's,
Yeah, too true. Yeah, and that's what the upcoming sequel to Joker is featuring Harley Quinn, and it's going to be I don't know if it matters, but I think it does. Lady Gaga is playing Harley Quinn opposite of Joaquin Phoenix, and the general like the umbrella that the Joker fits under, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, the umbrella is that it is an attack on masculinity. Now we're going to see this. They're going to bring the feminine aspect into it as well. And it's going to be attractive. The psychopathy will be attractive to the female. And it's not only just your physical generated female biological body type person that's going to be attracted to that. It's the sacred feminine, it's the sacred masculine, the aspects, the principles of self-defense, the principles of non-aggression or non-violence, and they're attacking that, and they're making that something. Man, they're coming after that as well. And these are your sacred masculine and sacred feminine principles of the pillars of enlightenment that I'm talking about here. And very good point, Brett, about the incel aspect of it all, because it is rapidly growing, a very rapidly growing theme in the culture these days. You wouldn't even know what an involuntary celibate person, you'd be like, what gibberish are you speaking to me? If it were 15 years ago, that term didn't exist. As far as I know, maybe it did. I didn't hear about it, but it's something that has come across, and I'm the one that decides when things got created. Right. But I'm just kidding around. But I mean, I've never heard that term before. I think maybe a decade ago. And now all of a sudden you hear it everywhere. And it's a very growing rapidly trend among men, and it's mostly men, if you notice.
And even just looking, Yeah,
Go
even
ahead,
looking at the
Tom.
way the term has changed in its usage over the past several years, where it's moved beyond even just talking about this trend of people self-identifying as incels and talking about these alienated young men who are having struggles not just in terms of their love life, but usually accompanied by different cultural and financial alienations as well. It was a very particular subculture online, and now most of the time that I see the term thrown around, it's mostly just as a term of abuse for man who is online who has the incorrect disposition towards cultural trends. You say this or that. That's the wrong perspective on different, on usually socially progressive trends or ideologies. Oh, you're an incel. That's the worst thing that they can say about a person, meaning you have been rejected by the kind of raising goddess cult, sacred feminine presence within that I think is a huge part of the super psyop that we're seeing. And kind of a preoccupation of mine that I talk about in the show a lot is that the whole Joker thing, the incel, the psychopath, this whole degradation of the masculine is really just a stepping stone towards, I think, what it looks more like an end game towards the of the ideology that we see coming through Hollywood, which a very good term that I see on Twitter sometimes for what we have coming is dark mother cyborg theocracy. And it is kind of, I think basically we are dealing with a goddess cult, a dark goddess cult that we've talked about kind of the blurring of boundaries, and often whether it's people who are into the whole Gaia worship thing, Mother Goddess, we break down the boundaries between humans and other species, between other species and plants, between the whole idea of ecology is melding everything together. Of course, there's the idea of technology basically accomplishing the same thing. Think about, Donna Haraway's cyborg feminism and lots of other thinkers who are even crazier than her, but the idea of liberation from structure, from patriarchy, from all these things through either nature or technology or some combination, just breaking down everything, melding everything together. And I think so with stuff like you mentioned Marina Abramovich, disciple Lady Gaga, playing Harley Quinn. So it's, you even see this with this Joaquin Phoenix Joker. It's such a masculine portrayal. It's so related to this very masculine cultural stream that we see going back through all these other anti-heroes and stuff like that. But then we see it coming out the other side to gonna be propping up Lady Gaga and all of this. I'm sure hints of the kind of deranged sacred feminine and all of that. And where the incel thing is very, very important is because it's all about alienated masculinity. Right, so it's kind of an intensification of some of these other trends we were talking about. Just thinking about the idea of even the idea of the archetypal hero moving in Western civilization from something like the knight, the defender of sacred order, like a sturdy, stable, coherent concepts that he is defending or a servant of, to something like the spy in the early 20th century. James Bond is the new knight, things like that. Then all of a sudden it's duplicity, it's trickery, it's liminality, it's all these things that we later see very fleshed out in kind of demonic clown Joker stuff. And like with all the here, like psychopaths we're talking about, we see there's a lot of different ways we can zoom into different sectors. I think decades-long super psyop, but it's an increasing intensification of the alienation of the masculine, just destroying the heroic archetype from the inside out. Just basically, I think, as a way to all these different kinds of nature worshiping and technology worshiping vectors of, I think, dark goddess material that we're seeing becoming more and more explicit in culture.
You raise an interesting point about the degradation of the masculine there, and we see it in the movie as well, as that this guy being the anti-hero through the movie, and it's clear as day that there are hints of narcissism. His mother's clearly a narcissist, and most narcissism is passed down from parent to child, and then the child obviously grows older and full-fledged narcissism. This guy's got a lot going on. He's not just a narcissist, but we know that attention matters to him. He wants to be seen. He wants to be important. And these are things that he's never felt have been accomplished for himself before in his entire life. And by the end of the movie, but in the beginning of the movie, he's getting beat up and kicked in the face, and he's, left for whatever in the gutter, laying in the fetal position as like a baby. Like, think about it. It's like even there's certain reflections of the span of a lifetime in the movie itself, with the way the cinematography captures the certain body language of the character himself. and he's in the fetal position in the beginning of the movie, totally unable to do anything for himself. And by the end of the movie, he's standing on top of a cop car with an entire crowd around him, and they all dressed like him. They're worshiping him. He's their god. He's their leader. And he finally feels like, yay, I've done something. And then, I mean, the very end scene, that's not the very end scene, but that's how his character, the arc in the movie, that's the span of his character development in the movie. And so, yeah, that's something that just came to mind. Have you guys been able to catch like I just lost the thought because. But go ahead, Brett.
If you remember it, yeah, go ahead. I can speak to the scene that you're talking about here. So one of the things that is almost ubiquitous in a lot of the mind control heavy theme films that we cover is religious inversion, right? Is typically inversion of Christianity and Christian themes, and so. What you have here, right, is it's a resurrection of death. It's a resurrection of the devil, and we can go through sort of tracing the trickster clown archetype to the devil, and then like in the Heath Ledger, they just play on that explicitly, right, with the devil cards and calling the devil and so on. There's endless, right, and having even the dogs, right, Cerberus, and he's the king of hell, and so and in general, that's a more kind of like openly archetypal movie, and a more openly it's really an archetypal exploration of the character in The Dark Knight and Nolan. Like here we have this humanization of him, so this is part of a cycle too. So the Joker in visual media, right, because there's a limited number of portrayals in visual media, so it's worth kind of tracking that in itself. So it starts with, I guess, Cesar Romero, this is the kind of comic relief bad guy who came in, not too threatening, doesn't even weird people out too much. He's pretty funny, and Romero didn't take the role seriously enough to even shave his mustache. So, and then that was part of why the Nicholson Joker was so shocking to people, and why it was like a dirty trick. It was like a joke that had been played. It was just like a black op that was played, on the audience. And so he kind of became human with Nicholson. He became realistic to audiences at the time. There was a real gothic kind of realism, to that kind of treatment of comic books, at least to audiences at the time. And then, but with Ledger, he becomes sort of divinized, right? It becomes sort of, he's what I call the dark self, to use Jungian terminology. He is this is an arc that's very common, because when you're dealing with religious inversion, you're going to run into this sort of devil as God, devil pretending to be God, dark self, and it's all over the comic book stuff. But I mean, one of the best versions of it is, Robert De Niro in Cape Fear, in Scorsese's Cape Fear. But anyway, so then you have the divinization. Now we're back decisively in the rehumanization. And this is all part of, this is alchemy they're doing too, right? This is dissolve and coagulate, divinize and humanize. They're recycling it, and they're moving, and in each cycle they're moving towards something else. So we've hit on it, right? Total infantilization, right? So we've gotten to this point of total infantilization. I think that's good. But anyway, back to the religious thing. So he is the devil being resurrected. So we have an inversion of the resurrection at the end. Okay, and it's the mob of clowns that's resurrected. And he's deaf, remember, because when he puts the white face on, if you remember that, at the end, right before he does the killing of the big guy that he worked with, he makes himself into death. And he calls himself another confirmation of this in the movie, how they're playing with the archetype in that movie. They use the Jackson C. Frank song Carnival, I Am Carnival. And he says, identifies with the song, I am Carnival. Well, if you read like James George Frazer, who does one of the first early Western anthropological analyses of the archetype, the carnival was a figure of death in the in the pagan rites of spring and folk culture in Europe, and there was a figure of death called the carnival that would be chased out. And if you look at the first Mardi Gras, which is carnival, the first Mardi Gras in America was in Mobile, and if you look at it, there's a float called the Order of Myths, which was from the first secret society order that created Mardi Gras, and it's a clown figure, something with a whip, like chasing out death. So it's a resurrection of death. Satan is the power of death. Evil is death. And this is a resurrection of death. This is the bringing back death, because that's the power of the devil, is the power of death. And it's the mob, right, that is resurrecting, and they want him. But the question is, who controls the mob? And who controls the mob is who controls the clown. And the fourth Psyop group you just saw is telling you that they control this, right?
Wow. Well, I knew there was something there with them pointing out that his name was Carnival. I couldn't find it, but thank you for bridging that gap for me. That I really appreciate that. I just couldn't find it myself.
Well, and all the musical cues are important, right? Everybody plays the fool, because in here the fool is even they do this trope with the word clown or joker, like the everyman. Everybody's a clown. You're the clown now, and they're pulling the strings, right? And we're all mass MK Ultra now, and we're all this character now, and we're going to get our revolution, because the revolution is the establishment. As who just wrote that in an article? Who's that guy who's always on Tucker Carlson from the Hoover Institute guy? But that was a good article. The establishment is the revolution, or the revolution is the establishment. Yeah, whole thing is like the sexual revolution, your rock and roll, your all of it. It's just like they're telling you in Under the Silver Lake, and they like showing you now and rubbing it in your face. And Joker is not an anti-establishment movie.
No, not at all. No, not at all. It's they want they want there to be a new establishment, and that establishment is chaos.
Right. Really, it's just enough cultural order to incept as much chaos as possible, just the absolute worst of both worlds. That's why having these cultural institutions like Hollywood and other industry and other vectors of mass delusion, just working hard to pump out as much breakdown of foundations of whether it's religion or nation or individual self. The irony is often missed that they need some kind of infrastructure, some kind of lack of some kind of vector of control in order to do a revolution, just to kind of bulldoze existing structures. And I think you were hinting that earlier when you were talking about the the summer of love that comes around in 2020, after this movie comes out. And it's interesting thinking about the relationship between the politics of Joker to the politics of Robert Pattinson Batman movie, which Brent covered on Psyop Cinema. And we really hate the movie, but it's very, very in a certain way, because you have the pseudo revolution movie basically trying to in Joker, basically the burn it all down, ontological dissociation, burn down the family, burn down the city, all of these things. And there's some hints of cautionary tale, but mostly it's glamorized and glorified. And then with the Batman, there's a scene where they have another version of the Joker in that one, with the name of the actor is escaping me, but that one scene was really, really, truly awful. But the Paul Dano Riddler character, who's kind of playing the trickster Joker figure in that movie, and Brett was talking about earlier, just a little bit earlier, Brett was mentioning about, it's the conspiracy theorists who are the villains, a threat to society, as portrayed in that movie. And you can stretch that earlier back to other films like Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson and a bunch of other stuff before in between. But really, the political messaging of the Batman is so comically heavy-handed, where there's the one character who's running for mayor, and the actress has said, "Oh yeah, my character's just supposed to be AOC," just like straight up. Like, her campaign posters in the movie are modeled after AOC's, and it's not Batman that's portrayed as the genuine hero of that movie. Batman is terrible at his job. He needs to realize how bad he is, and realize that he should put all his resources to saving the real hero, the AOC, the literal AOC stand-in, who in some kind of paranoid January 6th fantasy, you have literally online conspiracy theorist incels who follow the Riddler trying to kill AOC, and Batman has to save her, and basically like, all right, this is my job as a superhero. I have to save AOC from some weird mixed metaphor with global warming and the city's flooding and January 6th and all of that. So you have, like you were talking about with the 2019 Todd Phillips Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, the media salivating over I hope there's an incel shooting. Come on, somebody do this. And of course that doesn't actually happen, but it doesn't matter, because he's still, because the archetype is destructive on both sides. It's really destructive when you have all these people identifying with it. And like we were saying, kind of the increasing of male and masculine from earlier heroic archetypes, and people who, I get why they identify with these characters. These characters are very compelling, and these movies are often speaking to real social crises in a very manipulative way, but it's very destructive to glorify these alienated, psychopathic anti-hero characters. But then on the other side, the extreme vitriolic vilification, malevolence, they're both probably just as destructive in the long term. But I'm for this where basically, like I said, in movies like the Batman, it's the idea like, okay, now that we've shown you the social chaos that we want, which is burn down the city whenever we say it's a good idea for whatever reason, and I have my own, woke politics beyond just the normal culture war issues, is important as its own kind of vector of like of low intensity traumatizing mind control, and things along those lines. I've analyzed movies and some music videos and stuff like that in Psyop Cinema. That's the burn everything down. And then in terms of the new order that they want, it's basically saying like, hey, with a shiny, progressive, happy face, the AOC or AOC stand-in, that's ultimate good, and ultimate bad is Riddler and his incel conspiracy theorist. So it's very, very clear pattern of more dissolve and coagulate stuff between Joker and the Batman, but I think it's very obvious going on there.
Yeah, that and it's obvious to me that these superhero movies, the heroes, the caped heroes or whatever, they're always working with the government. They're always working with like the CIA or some 3-letter organization trying to save a politician so that the politicians can do the thing or whatever. And then you get something like the Joker, who's like taking matters into his own hands, but you can't go and stand up for yourself. I mean, as much as I may disagree with some of the things that these characters like the Joker actually do in the movies and stuff like that, I would never dream of doing some of the same things that they have done in the movies. But like another overall type of theme is that here's a person who is tired of relying on others, and they're just going to take matters into their own hands. I mean, that's kind of Heath Ledger's depiction of the Joker, is like, I'm just going to go and do it my way because no one else is going to do it. No one else is going to get these things done. So somebody's got to go and get it done and, crash the whole system because it's broken. But I don't know. But like you see the true heroes working with the government, and then you see the anti-heroes or the villains, and this is something I wanted to say. I'm glad you brought up the Matrix earlier, because it's like the Merovingian and how he's always how during the second Matrix movie, the Merovingian is basically speaking the truth. He's the bad guy, and they do it throughout all of these movies where the truth is coming out of the villain's mouth. And so you see again with Heath Ledger's Joker, some of the things that he's saying are true, where it's like, and even with Joaquin Phoenix, the things that he's saying at the end, right before he kills Murray, he's talking about moral relativism and how it's just like comedy, the comedy, you people decide what's funny and what's not funny, just like how you decide what's right and wrong, and it's just like, okay, he's shouting at the world, you're a bunch of moral relativists, what the fuck, and this is what happens, this is what you get what you fucking deserve. And he's turned himself into an agent of karma. Like he's the one that's come to the door, he's the one that's knocking on the door saying, time to pay that karmic debt, motherfucker, and he's ready to do what he's got to do to get what's owed. And that Murray gets what he deserves because he's being a POS, and that everyone else that treated him like shit got what they deserved. His mother, Murray, everyone, the guy from work who caused all the chaos from the beginning, the guys on the train that beat him up, just like the guys at the beginning of the movie. But this time now he's got the balls, he's got the chutzpah to really stand up for himself. He's got a method, and that method is a gun, and he knows it's a tool for self-defense, and that's what those are. And he uses it righteously. He's done nothing wrong. He's sitting on the train minding his own business as they're harassing this woman, and they approach him and they start beating on him. He's done nothing wrong. He's defending himself. And that's another thing that they're doing too. They're painting that person who defends himself on a subway like that a psychopath. You don't want to act like him, do you? You don't want to be like Joker. Look at what happened to him. You don't want to defend yourself with a pistol, do you? No, you don't want to do that. And it's like, but again, it's this tug of war of good and bad that we all deal with on a daily basis in our lives when we're, feeling our way through this thing called life, when we're met with all these challenges and all of these decisions that we have to make to be able to use our moral compass appropriately and to find our way through this muck and mire to come out the other side knowing that we did the right thing. But back to my original point was that, like, we hear the truth and we see the truth being depicted more than not in film these days through on the part of the villain, where the hero, the person who's supposed to be the character who's supposed to be the hero in the movie, is heavily relying on outside agencies like government to do the right thing. Put that in quotes. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, so what's going on there is a couple of things. I mean, well, we've already mentioned inversion. I can come back to that, but limited hangout. So, I mean, that's the thing that if you study film from a deep politics perspective enough, you find it uncanny, like how much, basically how many of the, how much of the dirty laundry of the deep state, right, is kind of hanging in plain view or hiding in plain view. Or if you will, okay, think back to inversion. We're already, okay, so reality and fiction aren't the same things. That's just a movie, though. And so you go try to tell somebody this, and, well, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. So it's like it's just a joke. It's just a dream. That's why things get lodged there probably psychologically, right? Because it can be denied. It can be sworn off. And so it's only fitting, right, that it be put in the mouth of a bad guy. That's also kind of an esoteric writing technique, like when Leo Strauss analyzes, Plato. You can question his readings, whatever. He thinks it's really important to look at what Callicles or Thrasymachus or the kind of the bad guy, the opponents of Socrates, have to say in the dialogue, because sometimes Plato may be hiding one of his views, in that. So that's esotericism. It's part of hiding stuff, and there's a programming element of that too, right? Because your unconscious hears it, even though your conscious mind denies it. But without going too far into the limited hangout side, I did want to make a point before you forget. So did I say this? I don't think I did. The first people to warn, if I'm not mistaken, the first people to warn the public about the Joker movie was like, suppose there was a release from the army, like warning its soldiers not to go to theaters or something like that. So, I mean, I suspect that came out of the cycle. I think that was where it began too, and that came out of the psychological warfare labs. The other thing that I think is going on here with the Joker, I really want to talk to your audience about, because I mean, one of our great discoveries, I think, is how, because we're talking about this archetype of the clown and the trickster and how archetypes are being used, but I mean, the mechanics of it, I would tell people something like this. It's really important. Well, in cinema in general, but I mean, the comic book stuff in particular is really important because these are basically the gods, right? These are supposed to take the place of divine energies. These are the new gods. I mean, the same thing with, I guess, the alien and in some cases even the AI. But what it is that you have a propensity to project the contents of your soul and your mind, right, out onto these type of archetypes that reflect them in some ways. And so people who understand how the mind works at this level, right, they know how to capture attention and energy. Once you've projected it, you can do what Thomas talked about, how, the comic book movies are so much about deconstructing the hero archetype and then reconstructing it, right? And at the root of this is this, again, same dissolve and coagulate alchemical philosophy that the occultic super elites exercise to manage culture, and that's the same reason why they're promoting chaos in the real meat space world as well, because they want to dissolve the old order and coagulate another order, and that's why we get this trickster archetype, which is about nothing so much as the dissolution of boundaries and the erasure of boundaries, and and total fluidity. So I think that's kind of the key to why it's a dangerous omen, and it's a demonic character, and it's the reason it's associated with. I mean, we just watched the fourth Psyop spy, so it's associated with spycraft. I would say it's associated with cultural engineering because it's also associated with the theater, right, with acting. So you think of Dionysius, and the theater in ancient Greece was actually a ritual to Dionysius. and there was an altar of Dionysius there, Dionysus, excuse me, sorry, I'm talking past myself. There was, the chorus, was basically acolytes of Dionysus and so on, and so you have it's been associated with the theater and the symbol of the what is it, Sock and Buskin, the smiling mask and the frowning mask. But
Yeah.
it's the actor. So the actor par excellence, we're told now, is the method actor, right? The Jack Nicholson, the Heath Ledger, who becomes the character, who themselves lose a sense of reality. And this is why it's become such a coveted role, and why we have, the three, arguably top method actors of their generations. Well, not Ledger, but it was a pretty impressive performance. But these three, serious method actors, at least two of them being. So this is why it's such a coveted role, because this is what it means. But it's the hidden hand too. It's the smiley face, the trickster in the background manipulating things, and it tells you and winks at you that it's the devil, that it's death. And so the movie is telling truth. It's saying that society is, I mean, that scene with the psychiatrist when it's like, when she's telling him, they don't care, they don't give a blank about me, they don't give a blunk about you. Like,
Yeah.
it's true. Like, that's it, just saying, it's blackpilling people, of course, right? So it's telling truths, but it's telling them in a way that makes it hopeless, and they're identifying with a totally infantilized character. It's all hopeless, burning down. So yes, they're telling people truths, but they're doing it very demonically to incent and telling you to take vengeance and do these things. And this is, I mean, I can't sit here and give a sermon or something, but this is spiritually pernicious, and it's really evil to spread this type of messaging and pretend that, like, gangster rap singers, I'm just telling it like it is in my hood, or whatever the justification. Now we're getting into another discussion about why there's no social responsibility or any responsibility. The artist is immune from responsibility. He's immune from explaining what his work means. It's the immunity of the artist here, and that comes from the cult of the artist and the worship of the artist, and it goes back to Nietzsche and Dionysus and everything. But Thomas must have gotten booted, or he may have had to go. But I'm here for up to the limit you want me to be here, James.
Okay. Yeah, he must have dropped out. It's okay. We'll work on getting him back. All he really would need to do would be to just, click that join link again. But yeah, I mean, that kind of threw me off a little bit too, that he dropped out. Sure that it's just a tech thing.
Yeah, he may have had to go a little bit early, or may have been having some problems. But
I would hope that he would say something. But it's okay.
Yeah, probably so. It looked like he froze up because he was like
mid.
Yeah, I think he probably froze up. So we probably should try to see if we can send him a link. I don't know how to do it.
He should be able to use the same exact one from the email. But you were saying.
Well, I was talking about how what we call religious engineering actually is done, and why archetypes are used, and why the comic book movies, if they're movies anymore, right? To me, it's a different medium. It's post-cinema, but it is. It's manifestly religious. So I'm a PhD student. I do religious studies, and I would tell people that they're not. Part of the reason that they're being manipulated, right, on a spiritual level, is they don't recognize spirituality when they see it. And yeah, this comic book stuff is for sure, it's a vulgarized and crass spirituality, but it's not any less powerless. Not any less powerful for that. And so what happens is people project certain energies, right, in their soul. We've talked about things, divine masculine. I won't try to necessarily articulate what these archetypes are, but I think Jung is broadly right. And I think, what Jung's talking about can be compared even to the Platonic forms, or the logoi in Orthodox theology that the fathers of the church describe, the kind of principles behind things. And in our soul, there's like basic principles. And so when you see it on the screen, you project it. You go into a semi-dissociative state. When you watch movies, it's like not quite like a dream. You don't become that dissociated, but you become semi-dissociated. Hence low intensity mind control. So you become dissociated. You project your mind. And the people who make the movies are manipulating, right, your mind, and you should probably consider whether they're doing it in a way that you think is broadly healthy, or not. And this is, I think we've been talking a lot here and making our case about what we think is going on and how they're manipulating this spiritual energy people. And it's very dangerous, because I think it's what's at the root of all this is an attack on the image of God. Okay, we're made in the image of God, and that's our body and soul, but our soul is made in the image of God. Okay, and so in taking our God images, and that's what's going on, this like inverting the resurrection, and like even when he's inverting all of this Christological material is about an attack on the image of God. And you want to destroy a person, you destroy their soul. And so to destroy a person's soul, you destroy their God concept, their image of God, how they see God. And that's what a lot of these, especially through the bad guys, who pretend to be God and stuff. And I mean, a lot of ways. So, and that's definitely at work here in the Joker. And a guy like Zack Snyder, we've covered, right, who's a controversial but huge, right, one of the biggest comic book directors. Snyder has made it explicit that he's interested in, he doesn't use the word re-engineering, but he says changing, altering whatever people's religious beliefs and values. And he is a religious engineer. I say par excellence with qualification. I don't think he's a great director, but he's definitely swinging for the fences in terms of trying to re-engineer people. I mean, just come on. I mean, watch the Superman, Batman or Superman stuff. The constant God. Superman is God. Batman is man. Lex Luthor's the devil. I mean, this is the game that they're playing.
Wait, didn't they advertise the Justice League movie with the subtitle like "Gods Among Men"? And then even if you want to take it out of the DC universe, you can bring it over to the Marvel universe, and you can say in the first Avengers film, when they're exiting the helicopter because Thor shows up and gets Loki and then runs off with him, Iron Man goes after him, then Captain America gears up to jump out of the helicopter, and who was it? Anyways, somebody turns to Captain America and says, I don't think you want to do that, Cap. These guys are basically gods. And I mean, of course, it's Thor and Loki, Norse mythology, gods from the Norse mythology, sure. But here we go again with another depiction of the trickster archetype, which is Loki, like the god of mischief, and it's just this archetype has existed. That's just a point of how long this archetype has existed for. Even in the ancient mythologies, they recognize this as a core part of a person's psychological makeup. That there's this aspect of that in there. But yeah, I can definitely see what some of your point that you're making about replacing that, and Zack Snyder's effort. Not a very good one, but but yeah, I totally recognize that, man. Good point. Yeah, for sure. Thomas, you're back.
Yeah, sorry about that technical difficulty on my end, but good to be back. But yeah, with the Justice League stuff, I mean, there was even, I think there was a T-shirt that that Zack Snyder had designed related to the release of the Justice League movie that had just like all these like very, very esoteric symbols related to the plot of the Justice League movie and like the several sequels he had planned. And this has been a lot of months now, so I'd have to look it up again. But basically, it's all this alchemical transformation into the new human with all the different mythological symbols that Snyder is mined for that. And I like that reference of the Avengers movie. And I really, really hate the Marvel movies, but Captain America's response to, I think, Black Widow, these guys are gods, is good when he says there's only one God and he doesn't dress like that. I do like that line. But yeah, you're talking about how it's these Norse god characters. And when you get to the Thor movie, there's lines there about like, oh, I come from a place where science and magic are the same, which that's such a huge trope when we're talking about these anti-human themes coming out of the Hollywood superculture, that we're entering into a paradigm where we can trust our techno sorcerer overlords more than ever, because it's both all the enchantment and meaning of magic, aka essentially the occult, with like all the authority and rationality, quote unquote, of science. And it gets really ridiculous, like with how hard they push that with the Marvel movies, where they have like physics consultants, even on like the Doctor Strange movies and stuff like that, who are basically, when you actually look at what they said, it's like, oh yeah, multiverse is kind of a concept. So basically just this pop science stuff as like this get out of jail free card for these people to do anything. Yeah. That's exactly the one I was thinking of. Yeah, the Joseph Campbell quote. So there, you have Campbell is kind of like watered down unionism when we think of the activation of the dark self and these other union concepts that Brett had mentioned earlier. But yeah, I have a bunch of notes, but it's interesting. But you can see like it's there on the shirt because it ends with a baby, and like that's so significant because that's so much of what the superculture is pushing is infantilization. In a piece of writing that I just did, I think I used the phrase infantilization disguised as divinization by way of technological augmentation. So disguised like all this like occult, superhuman, magic, science together stuff really is all just coming together to create infantilization and to create the debasement of the human experience. The whole incel thing we're talking about is one version of that. But then also the idea of the divine child comes up over and over again in very sinister forms of modern occultism. Think Aleister Crowley, Aeon of Horus is the Aeon of the Child, all of that. Think of the idea of this Stanley Kubrick, 2001: A Space Odyssey. We're the godlike futures. We're going to be big babies and bright bubbles floating in space. They're really, really spelling this out. The idea that these power fantasies that Zack Snyder, who you guys were just talking about, is really interested in, like Sucker Punch is maybe the ultimate Hollywood dissociation movie. All it is basically reducing us to states of helplessness, whether it's these individual victims of these trauma-based mind control programs or just global audiences increasing their buying into the Hollywood psyop through stuff like franchise filmmaking. Marvel stuff becomes a part of grown adults' identities. Like it's all just feeding into the fame machine, into the dream machine, all that. So I think all that to say, I think the Marvel stuff you're hinting at is a very, very big piece of the puzzle here and relates to what we're talking about with Joker.
Yeah, for sure. You use that term grown adult very, very loosely, but it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I have watched many of these movies, being a fan of comic books in my childhood and everything because it's exciting and woo, but it's not, it like you're saying, it does become a part of people's identity, and it's kind of tragic once you really start thinking about it.
Yeah, we should call out what it is. Like this is an assault on human dignity. It really is.
Yeah, and I like Brett's point about, these aren't really films. These are like how did you phrase it? It was post cinema.
Well, I mean, speaking of Martin Scorsese himself, who weirdly was involved, it was actually direct.
Yeah.
He nearly directed and then nearly produced the Joker movie, just to show you what we're talking about here. But so he, and I think as well, I mean, Lynch has said stuff at Francis Ford Coppola, and he said the same thing. They just said that the Marvel stuff and the DC stuff, this is not what they mean by cinema. Like, what do we think of it? Like, I don't think it's a movie. It's like, it's like asking an expert on paintings to judge music or something. It's like a different medium. So that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I mean, someone who became, like a film snob, like back in the 90s. And it wasn't just to be a snob. I mean, I really just loved this, aesthetic ideal. I guess I was sold, and I sort of absorbed it and had my own sort of relationship to it. And then I saw that in the mid 2000s that it really started to disappear. So I call it sort of the post cinema era after then. And occasionally you see a piece of cinema, but
it's like, that's not where the competition is at. I mean, it's like it seems like, viewing films of the past, there seemed to be like this competition, like who could do the best, crime film, who could do the best, action film. And it was like a competition. That's what it looked like. And these great directors who would time and time again just wow you, like Stanley Kubrick and Martin Scorsese and, all of these, you go down the list, and it's just like, but yeah, I mean, the thing about these Marvel movies and the DC movies, to me, it really does just seem like it's how they're injecting occult symbolism into the minds of children and into the minds of grown children as well. People that look like they're adults, but they're not. But like, it's like all occult symbolism, time and time again, all over the place. You can't get through one of these movies without there being some sort of subconscious thing that the person with eyes to see, like you just, oh, there it is. There's the symbolism right there. There's the subplot right there. There's the this or the that, and it's right in front of your face. But everyone else is just like drooling and eating popcorn and just taking it in, and it's just going in. They're so receptive in this state. I'm sure that you guys are aware of like the whole alpha waves and all that stuff in the 60 frames per second, and how the flicker rates and all of these things that are literally, there I go using the word literally, but they're there to put somebody into a hypnotic trance where they're receptive of information, and signs and symbols rule the world. And that's what's going on in these movies. It's why they're every last one of them. And it's always the same as advertisement agencies come out and they say the same exact thing. How many times can one production company make the best movie ever? And it's like every single Marvel movie comes out and it's like, this is the best movie ever. It's like, there's no way. It doesn't happen that way. I'm sorry. It's a trick to get people to go and watch it. And so that's what I see their purpose as. And I agree with you that they're not very good films. They're just entertainment, conspiratainment. And it's just like my buddy Ivan kind of coined that phrase of conspiratainment, where it's like, it's just built to put these ideas in your head. They even use names of controversial figures and throughout political history. They'll reuse names. I've caught them doing it. I haven't got any notes on it, but I'm like, wait a minute. And then I go and listen to some of the work that like a man like Richard Grove or James Corbett does. And I listen to them giving these hours long talks about American history, political history. And I hear these names. I'm like, wait a minute. That's like that guy that was named in the Marvel movie I'm like, wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah. In the Batman film, the new Batman film, there's all these Watergate figures and Coulson and Mitchell and stuff. And when there's a new like show about the Mitchells coming out with Sean Penn right at the same time, and and they were reenacting. I mean, we don't have to go into that movie, but they were reenacting like the even down to the Jack Ruby kind of thing. They're like reenacting the JFK assassination, or maybe it was RFK, a little bit of both. I mean, they were doing all kinds of totally in that movie, and they do this in a lot of stuff. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it's almost like if you go. I don't know if it's really to this extent, but it's almost like if you were to like go and hear that name again, just like how I go, wait a minute, just like that. Wait, that sounds like that name from the Marvel movie. And then maybe it's to discredit the actual story or the actual name, or you go to Google the name or something like that, and the character from the movie shows up instead of the actual character from real life, sort of like isn't that what they're calling like the memory hole? Isn't that like what's been coming out? I've been hearing that term a lot recently. This idea of a memory hole, where it's like it gets lost. And anyways, that's something that I've noticed. But back to the Joker for a few more minutes. I mean, what have you guys picked up about about how his interactions with his mother are in throughout the film?
Brett, do you have anything on this one, or?
No, I have. I thought Thomas is sort of the expert on the the what's going on with the gender dynamics. No, I have a lot. I mean, we did like 4 episodes, by the way, if people want to check out. Or we have more in the whole cycle, but I mean, we really talked about a lot that film. So I know I covered it there, but. One thing they do with his mother, I just off the top of my head on the topic of religious engineering, is you notice she has like a Madonna and child image. I don't think it's an icon exactly, but it's like an image, it's like a piece of art. There's some other, I think there's actually a variety, perhaps, if I recall, of like Marian art around her. And there's definitely an attack on the mother figure, right? Is that she's a completely negative character, and she's a complete Looney Tune. And I think that's their message, that religion, I mean, why doesn't a person like this turn to religion? Where's religion of any kind? In the movie, it's just a godless, hopeless, black, nihilistic world that people like David Fincher have cinematically prepared for us. And indeed, Martin Scorsese have cinematically prepared this alternate universe for people. but there's no religion
Well,
because
if I may interject there, I would view that there is a religion there, and her religion is she she's praying to Thomas Wayne, and she's praying
oh well, there's
to.
religion of all kinds there, but that means there's no like formal religion as such, except in the background and through the archetypal stuff going on, and there's a lot of that, right? Even with him, you could even say there's like the story of Moses is involved here, right, where he thinks that he's the lost child of royalty, and you know, um, so, but oh yeah, but with the mother, so yeah, if there's an attack on I mean, so there's an attack on the masculine, there's an attack on the feminine, there's an attack on the family. It's all out psychological, attack in this movie. And Thomas should say something because I think this is almost anticipating something further down the line. I think in the programming going on now, in terms of gender. Go ahead, Thomas.
Sure, yeah, and I hinted at that earlier, and yeah, I was kind of, Brett, I remember you talking about some of the religious stuff around the mother figure during our initial pass at the Joker on our show, and so thanks for that. But yeah, so a few things that come to mind, like one would be the significance of Norman Bates, Norma Bates kind of relationship in something like Psycho, which one of our very first episodes on the show, we talked with Jason Horsley about his analysis of Psycho and the significance of that, and the kind of Norma Bates cult that we live in, where it's the visibility of the sadistic masculine, and then the invisibility of the masochistic, feminine, dark maternal figure that envelops everything, and the kind of the vengeance against the mother is such a key part of the almost the archetype of the Hollywood psychopath, whether that's the director as psychopath, or it's Hitchcock torturing the audience, or all these different psychopath figures we get as propped up in pop culture. But a lot of the violence there is like this unsuccessful attempt to break free of the kind of all-consuming, almost metaphysical force of the dark maternal figure, like Norma Bates, taking on Norman Bates, taking on his mother's identity. And so I think you have some hints of that, of the kind of incel, alienated Joker character that Joaquin Phoenix is playing, engaged in this violence against his own awful, villainized mother figure. And then you have the general assault on the family as kind of signifying the breakdown of human sanity. You have the social unrest that we talked about, and like it's glorified in a lot of ways. You're obviously supposed to be thrilled as an audience member when you see, just like him on top of the car, a city on fire, people are worshiping. It's very cathartic to see this figure that we've seen kicked around for 2 hours to gain this much power. But some of the hints that there's something going awry there, like, is one of the big things is the murder of Bruce Wayne's parents, of Thomas and Martha Wayne, where you have Thomas Wayne is obviously very much villainized in Joker, which is also a sign that things are going awry and going downward in terms of the spiritual and psychological messaging in these movies, because as much as there's really suspect, dangerous, corrosive stuff in the Nolan movies, there's some positive stuff as well. One of the things being kind of Thomas Wayne as this voice, saying, "Don't be afraid," to his son right before he dies, and he's this voice almost telling Bruce Wayne, "Don't dissociate into this superhuman fantasy. You don't have to pretend to be a bat. You can just be human." And the whole arc of the Nolan movies is Bruce Wayne kind of learning to be human again, which I think is very positive. And so Thomas Wayne is really redemptive there, but then he's just obviously a total villain in this one, and in Joker, and in the Batman, and all of that. So he kind of deserves to die, but Martha Wayne certainly doesn't. And so the guy wearing the clown mask, killing both of Bruce's parents, and then you have the cut at the end from Joker and Arkham to seeing Bruce Wayne standing next to the corpses of his murdered parents. So you have just basically the murder of the parental figures as signifying this point when Arthur as Joker, he's reached this point where he's totally in this dissociative state, and he doesn't know it's real or not, even though he's reveling in the madness. The audience doesn't know it's real or not, and we're supposed to think that that's interesting and cool. But it's specifically the death of the basically innocent mother figure, Bruce Wayne's mother, that I think really is the key there, that there's something, that this revolution isn't all that it's telling us that is, that there's some kind of destruction here that's sadistic, that's bad. And so, yeah, those are, so basically I don't think that Joaquin Phoenix Joker is successfully escaping his kind of evil mother figure. You see him just kind of get trapped in those traumatizing cycles of generational dysfunction when he kills her. And then with the death of the mother figure with the Waynes, you kind of see the idea that, okay, this cathartic revolutionary fantasy is just a fantasy. This is destructive in a bad way.
That's the joke, by the way, at the end there. He says you wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
Is that he's obviously thinking about that. Like that is how this movie is playing with the audience's mind, is by using our, as the viewer, our ability to know in the film what is actually going on and what's not. That's why you see things like his fantasy relationship with the girl down the hall, the beginning of the movie where he first gets home and they're doing their nightly ritual of watching Murray, and he thinks you think as a person in the audience that he's having a flashback to a time that he attended the show. Come to find out, it's actually a daydream where this is his proxy father, because his real father's nowhere to be found. That's something you find out very, very early on in the movie, is that this is that then you know that this is the proxy father figure of Murray is confirmed, because you find out throughout the movie that this is indeed something that they do every single night. He comes home and his mom's asleep in front of the TV. What's on the TV? Murray. When they go to the hospital, what's on the TV? Murray. He wants to go and go. He goes on the show. He's so excited, and even when he pictures himself in the audience. So, anyways, like we are, as the audience ourselves of the movie, we are trained as the movie is going on to not know exactly what is going on in the movie for real. And then by the end, like you're saying, the whole he is using his mind to like put himself in places, and then we see it on the film as just scenes, but like that's actually how it's supposed to be kind of depicted or taken in. And he sees Bruce Wayne in the alley standing over his dead parents, and he's chuckling about it, and he's like, oh, it's you wouldn't get it. And what he has done, effectively what he has made sense of, is that through his actions he has put Bruce Wayne in the same position as him. And that is the joke, is that look what I did, and here's all this chaos because of me, and look what happened. And he has no idea that through his actions in this little multiverse, whatever, through this version of the story, that through his actions he's in fact created he's created the second half of it. Because the whole idea through Jungian psychology is that the Batman is Bruce Wayne's mask. But then there's another element to it too, where there's a mask persona dynamic between the Joker and Batman, and that the Batman's mask is Joker. So you have a mask of a mask, and that's why through many iterations of the Joker, both in cartoons and especially in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, the Joker is obsessed with Batman being able to take off his mask. You want to see what's under the mask. The integration of the shadow self with the persona. Like that's a very big underlying theme of the relationship between the Joker and Batman, is that aspect of it. And then to touch on another point that I think Brett made earlier about the like getting the audience to kind of, I think you said something along the lines of that before Joaquin Phoenix, there's never really been a backstory. There's never really been, like, it's always been, well, here's the Joker, he's the villain, you know him, you know him, you love him, and here he is to do all the things Jokers do. And this is the first time we actually get a name other than Napier from the but that was never really, you never really got a chance to see yourself in the Joker before. You never really saw the person, the man, the struggles, the this, the that. It was always like, like the Jack Napier in what's his face? Like, what? Why am I forgetting?
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. Sorry. It happens. But anyways, like you don't ever get that. You get a few different times throughout history where like they hint at something, but they never really give you They never really give you anything, and then before that, like the closest you get is Alan Moore with The Killing Joke, and he gives him a backstory but not a name. You never get a name. Sometimes you get a backstory but no name, and sometimes you get a name but hardly ever any backstory. And this time around it's like you get everything. You get it all, and what I about his relationship with his mother is like he is tortured by that woman. and like I think I said it earlier tonight about him kind of doling out and dishing out the punishments and being like, no, like you're getting what you fucking deserve. And he goes and he does that to everyone. He does it to Thomas Wayne. And that's another part of the joke, is that he confronts Thomas Wayne. He gets punched in the face and he gets told his mother's a loon, and that and you can tell that he's like getting told he's crazy too. And then he's just like feels betrayed and abandoned by everybody and everything around him, including the world. And he just like had enough. And I think that that's a big part of the movie as well, is this a theme of abandonment and on all levels, physically, through the idea of him being adopted. So there's that aspect. Emotionally, from his mother. Spiritually, from his father. Well, physically from his father as well, but with physical abandonment comes all the other forms of abandonment by default. I've gone over that in my work many times. Is that when if you're physically abandoned as a child or whenever, by default, spiritual, emotional, mental, all the other forms of abandonment come with it, because obviously there's no one there to tend to those needs. And this poor dude, he's gone through the ringer with all of those, and the idea of him being adopted or not is a very big play, because this is another thing that you never really get confirmation about. But that's another way the movie kind of plays with your own mind as a member of the audience, is by making you question exactly what the hell is going on here. And you see the claim of Thomas Wayne had those papers drawn up, and how powerful and rich he is, and all of these different claims. And then during that interview that the younger version of his mother, Penny, is having with that doctor, he's picturing himself in the room, and obviously that's a transcript of what was said in the room. I believe that there's a tape recorder on the table. I could be wrong about that, but typically in those types of meetings, what's going on is that the doctor is making a shorthand note of everything that was said in the room. Sometimes there's a tape recorder in the room, and so that way they can put it on paper and have it on more of a, more records. At least back in the day, that's how it was. You could picture that time frame being probably in the mid 50s to the early 60s. If 1981 is when the movie is set and he's about 30 something years old, they found him 4 years old is at that time when she's being interviewed. So that I would picture that around, mid to late 50s, something like that. Maybe even late 40s. Who knows? But in any case, kind of went on a tangent there. But that's okay, I guess.
Yeah, if I could jump back to something you said just a couple minutes ago, I think that it's so important, the "you wouldn't get it" line, partially because Todd Phillips says that that's the only real laughter from him in the movie is in that scene at the end, because obviously he's laughing throughout, but it's this dissociation, it's this this thing he can't control, it's this mental disorder, and then
the coping mechanism.
That's a coping mechanism, yeah, this uncontrollable coping mechanism for his social alienation, psychological instability, and all of these things, and then at the end, he's laughing for real. Basically, this is part of why the movie works so well. Why just over a decade after this hyper iconic performance of Ledger as the Joker, like how does another performance as the Joker work so well? And it's because it's exactly what you guys were talking about in terms of the backstory, not just the backstory for its own sake, but in terms of, in Ledger, like we were talking about, is just the devil. Like we have the full power Joker from the beginning. And sure, people still fetishized him, still wore the t-shirts and quoted the "Why So Serious," introduced a little anarchy and all that. But it's this whole new level to the way that people can project themselves into it once you see Phoenix doing this such a great role, this such a great performance as how do we see the everyman Joker, who is like the symbol of all these alienations that people can relate to, learn to wield the satanic powers of dissociation. He's laughing for real at the end because, like I said, it's the dissociative nature of just a film, of artwork at its manipulative worst. It's blurring the lines of fiction and reality, and now that's basically what the Joker is. Like Phoenix has achieved ledger state at the end, and people can project themselves into that, and so much of that is about fame. It's about the fetishization of celebrity, even infamy. That's why so many of these psychopaths and anti-heroes, real and fictional, on and off screen, it's the idea of spectacular crime. You'll have all the eyes on you, so it doesn't matter what you're famous for. There's still just the power to fame itself, and you get that in the movie when he's just like the leader of the riot, the Joker clown god watching the city burn. It's basically it's celebrity, it's fame, it's the worship of somebody who's the center of violent spectacle mixed with dissociation. And like the real irony to this is that the more and more people buy into the Hollywood myth, the more and more people worship the stars on the screen in order to gain the sense of power or pseudo meaning in a reality when like the real cultural forces behind Hollywood have like wiped out or tried to wipe out all these other sources of actual human health, stability, and meaning. The more people buy into that, the more alienated they're going to be from those actual human foundations. So it's just another vicious cycle, another vicious feedback loop. And then there's, again, with Joker, it's feedback loops on feedback loops. So it's both that cycle of alienation, and then the cycle related to people being able to like relate more and more and more, project themselves further and further into this nested cycle of dissociations that the character represents.
There's also the aspect too of even though we are clearly dealing with a psychopath, he is still finding balance. He's in Joker, we have Arthur and his other side. We have the mask, and we have the shadow, and that's the Joker character when he's got the makeup and he's doing all the bad deeds. It's his shadow. By the end, he's integrated the shadow. He's become whole, and that's why the laughter at the end is not the same laughter that you hear throughout the movie. And as he's killing his mom, he's telling her like, "Oh, all this time you told me there was something wrong with me. Well, it turns out that's who I really am." And it's like, well, he has figured out this way to integrate the shadow self into the persona and be able to kind of move forward as this balanced being. Although he's balanced in chaos, he's still balanced as a psychopath. It's balance, it's harmony that he has found. And that's another thing there about that laughter at the end. I never noticed but you mentioned it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Yep, that's absolutely correct. But I never really took that in and noticed that myself. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and that's what all of this occult conjunctio oppositorum, integration of the dark side, balancing dark light. Oh no, it just turns out to all be the dark side, right? After all. And so the message you're selling you is right. You're infantilized, and you're useless, and you're non-essential, and you're put upon. Oh no, really, your trauma makes you into the dark god now, and the new mutant, and whatever the cipher is. And this relates directly to Monarch, mind control, at least as described by Fritz Springmeier in collaboration with the supposed victim of it. The idea is that you're subjected to all of this horrible trauma in part to bring out your rage and your anger and your power. So I think people could get that trope. I mean, you look at a movie like Deadpool, right? The first Deadpool, where they've made it into actually a technology, and that's just Monarch mind control. That's right. I mean, either they're reading Fritz Springmeier or Fritz knew. I mean, that was back in the 90s too, man. It's just everything is. So I do a series where I analyze Monarch themes specifically in film, but I wanted to speak to the orphan thing too. So that is something I analyzed on the show, and Jonathan Pajot does a good job on this. But I'll add to that I'm pretty sure these people like directly were looking into the Jungian stuff. I can't remember if it was Jung himself or certain of his students, but they really got into what they call the archetype of the orphan. And the orphan here is kind of also encoded into his name, Arthur Fleck, and he has a mother, so he's sort of like he's the Grail Knight, like he's the Clown Knight, he's the Percival, right, the clown, the fool, right, who's in search of the Holy Grail. Okay, but no, he's nothing. He's a Fleck, right? So we have this duality, and that's the same thing with the Batman and the Joker and the round and round and the opposites going on here. But that's also this sort of orphan bond, right? Like he visits the trauma on Batman that was visited on him by leaving him without parents. In this case, so he only doesn't have he's lacking a father, but he's really psychologically has no mother, right? Also, that's it. She's the dead. This is another, the dead mother. I don't think that's not Jungian. That's in like Lacan or something else too. There's another. It's the dead. I mean, so there's just. I mean, Batman. All of Batman is this most psychological stuff in comics, and they just went crazy with it, basically in this movie. And there's just so much stuff built in. But Jonathan Bajot does a good job of analyzing some of that stuff, with regard to this film as well. So I wanted to say something too about we've been talking so much about the blurring of fiction and reality, and so the mechanism here. I mean, this is a magic ritual that when you dissolve the distinction between fiction and reality, you can then use fiction to influence reality. Okay, you can be the Wizard of Oz. And so that's what this is about too, is the power, so the people who need psychological warfare stuff done for them, right? They're sooner or later, if their ops are big enough, they're going to go to Hollywood. And so this is the power Hollywood wields, like even in the power of not those, whatever Hollywood is, but the power of people who know the secrets of managing consciousness and how to do it well, because it's, what is it? The line, the David Bowie line in, science isn't an exact science, from The Prestige, right? Where he plays Tesla, who's doing real magic, but it's not an exact. So when we talk about the mind control and the techniques and the method, well, exact science isn't an exact science, I think might be the line of that. But that's part of the magic. That's what's going on, breaking down these boundaries so that then Hollywood can influence you, influence reality, create reality, manage reality. And the Joker is a prime example of revelation of the method. Like what a lot of the stuff we've been describing, they're doing to Arthur, happening to Arthur, that's happening to the viewer then vicariously through Arthur, So what else did I have? I mean, I had just one more point. I mean, we were talking a lot about great points about flicker rate and all of that stuff, right? So that's part of what we call the method, right? These hypothetical or not so hypothetical kind of collection of techniques that are kind of trade secrets that are used to manipulate people on a mass scale through film. And that's one of them, the flicker rate and the light. And that's all part of MK Ultra, right? And a lot of that stuff. But another thing is just like, so sex and violence, just bombarding people with sex and violence is a form of psychological warfare. This relates to the Phoenix program and how moral terrorism, or to come
Joaquin Phoenix program,
the Joaquin Phoenix program, right? And so there's a lot of feedback there between the Phoenix program and psychological warfare and culture and so forth. But they understood that bombarding people with sex and violence and terrorizing them made them susceptible to reprogramming. And advertisers understand this too, because if I recall, I read way back when I took a PR class or something, or some class, that like they put commercials often on the news, like, right, they like a lot of violence on the news. Advertisers like it. They put a commercial right after it, because when people are bombarded with a bunch of violence, right, they go into a kind of fight or flight, response, and they're looking for safety and comfort. And here's the advertising. So if you watch Natural Born Killers, he jokes, like, he shows you that, right? Or the Coke commercial with the bear that makes you soothing right after Mickey's talking about this super horrific string of horrible crimes and describing it for the American, like, so all this. What's been going on, it started really in the 60s, late 60s, with the New Hollywood era, the way that we have been consistently bombarded with demoralizing, degenerate sex and violence. I mean, I don't know how I understand a lot of your audience is libertarian. They believe in free expression. I come from all that, but I mean, I let that kind of commitment to that and those aesthetic values like not allow me to see what I now can trace, like the actual psyops. And we've barely scratched the surface here today, but people need to understand that they are under psychological attack through the entertainment industry. So that's my closing remark.
Well, that's a great closing remark. I'm glad that you said that on the show this evening. That's wonderful. Thank you.
And the idea of the significance of the word phoenix, not to get too schizo about it, but there is something significant to it coming up at all these key places. Thinking about the Phoenix program, thinking about the significance of Vietnam and in these world of nested psyops we can trace throughout history, and then thinking about maybe how that relates to Taxi Driver, which again really accelerates this whole Joker cycle that we're talking about. But you can go think about that. We can think about. Again, I think that Crowley and occultism is a big piece of all this. We can even think about Alan Moore writing Killing Joke, that really giving new life to the character of the Joker. And in Crowley and Thelema, you have the Mass of the Phoenix. You also have Jazz Coleman, kind of from the band Killing Joke, being kind of interestingly related to some of this creepy clown imagery and stuff like that. And he famously, or not famously, but he did say that he thought that Heath Ledger was doing all of his mannerisms in The Dark Knight and stuff like that. And anyway, Coleman's really into Lovecraft and Crowley and stuff and all of this. Then Joaquin Phoenix's hippie parents, they changed their last name to Phoenix because the death and rebirth symbolism. So this idea of a coagulate and dissolve, it shows up in all these particular places for a reason. And it's Joker is a good movie, and part of that is the catharsis. A big part of that is the catharsis of whether it's with the mother or with the Millary character, of all these things like you were mentioning. Some of the stuff he's calling out is real, and that's part of the part of the Hollywood psyop, which is lionizing the dark masculine, for the incel, the psychopath, and all of that, relates to the part that wants to make good movies, that wants to do skillful filmmaking, that needed to get culture collectively into this trance state in the 20th century and beyond through actually caring about accomplishing good art to some degree. And and good art isn't good in itself, but bad art is always a bad thing. And there's kind of and the post-cinema era that we're in is part of that assault on human dignity, by moving us to a place where we don't even need great directors to be psyoping us in these ways, to be mind screwing us in all these different ways. It's Marvel, it's Disney, it's all this just filth now, this filth that isn't even trying to be great art. And so just to mention that that when Hollywood kind of takes over and art and imagination becomes ends in themselves rather than grounded in a coherent worldview, once we give ourselves into the idea that as long as a film is giving us catharsis, then it's a good thing, and we give ourselves over to the Hollywood psyop and to the cultural controllers, it was inevitably going to go to the Disney, Marvel, new Star Wars, whatever crap model, where once we've given ourselves into art for its own sake, it was going to become bad art for its own sake. And so the Joker it's 2019, but it almost represents to me, and it's calling back, it's set in this earlier era, and it represents an earlier era of psyop that was related to this grandiose style of filmmaking that was trying to be aesthetically great, related to at least trying to show genuine catharsis, treat real issues, and all of these things. And of course, with this Joker cycle psyop, there was all this evil embedded in that. But I think we're going to end up nostalgic for that level of evil, for considering what's coming next, which on a metaphysical, aesthetic, psychological level is going to be so much worse in all these ways.
Yeah, it's a sign of the times that the amount of the lack of respect that the filmmakers have for the audience these days, the amount of intelligence that these filmmakers think that the average person has, with the amount of the films that are coming out that are being popularized. There are good films coming out, but you have to really dig and find them. I just watched this one the other week, a few weeks back, called The Wave, and it stars Justin Long. And personally, I thought that was a very, very well done film, a very good messaging in there, and it was pretty, I'll say, trippy, because it's about a hard lesson learned from through taking drugs, and it's a very good message in there. Actually, I would suggest that you guys watch that and maybe let me know what you think, because I thought it was a very well done film. And I think Justin Long has come a long way as no pun intended on the name, but I think he's come a long way as an actor, from the what was it? What was he doing? Like Idiocracy, which is hilarious. Like, but that's an example that there are good films coming out these days. It's not all bad, but that's what they're popularizing because again, they have no respect for us. They think we're dumb. So they're giving us shitty material to consume and just go back for more, like a buffet, all you can eat buffet of crap. There's a lot left that I wish that we could talk about the Joker though. But it's getting to be that time. What do you guys say?
Yeah, there's always more to say with the Joker. I mean, this thing goes on forever. I know you've said you've done shows just kind of like going really in depth to the 2019 movie in particular, and yeah, pretty much almost any media that has the Joker seems in some way to be a strange attractor to like this through line through all these dynamics of the Hollywood psyop, and then all these other vectors of the assault on humanity that we've been seeing more and more mainstreamed over the last 100 years. The Joker just seems to be all over those things, and so ton more notes on the 2019 movie and just the character in general. But I guess we have to cut it off somewhere. But I just hope that I hope that people see at least some of these patterns that we're identifying, the connection between liminality, the trickster, spectacular crime, fetishization of fame, dissociation, madness, all of this. We can go into any one of those things and find historical examples connected to it, but just also remember kind of the key of a low intensity MK Ultra of that there are individuals who are getting broken down and turned into wannabe styles of real life Joker figures. We see that with all these assassins and stuff like that. But really, this is all of us. We're all they're trying to tell us we're all clowns now, and it's not true. We're not all clowns now. And if we learn to be wary of even really good art and good movies that are pushing these destructive messages, we'll stand a lot better chance for when the messages and the quality of the films collectively get a lot worse.
Right. And just to your point about we're all clowns now, like how you're talking about the end of the movie, everyone's wearing clown masks and everything like that. People might go, but wait, the film is set in 1981. Well, can we be clowns now? Well, that's why they use the Charlie Chaplin film Modern Times, and they really emphasize the title of the film and they emphasize the title of Modern Times inside the film Joker.
Yeah, well, there's another thing built. There's another thing built into that is that the new Hollywood generation is also called the film school generation, and one of the I know somebody who took classes from Scorsese who he ended up being an industrial filmmaker. It wasn't a big deal, but I mean, one of the like datums of these people, one of their like maxims is that, and I think this is one of their great discoveries, is that movies are not about the era they're depicting, they're about the era in which they're made. And so they did that self-consciously. So they made like anti-Westerns, for example, that it's like so thinly coated kind of like 60s stuff, right? Now it's not, it's becoming more obvious, right? So they think they've had this discovery. That's part of what's going on there too. Right? Yeah, this is about now, of course, not really about 1981, but you can look into why they're using it. So yeah, we did actually. I just want to say, we actually covered. I was surprised how much ground we covered. I hope this is semi-comprehensible to your audience. Although I take it they've been kind of primed by this stuff. A movie that you should see. That wow, to prove we haven't really even broken the surface too deeply is Chapter 27. I mean, there's no question when you watch that movie that everything that we're saying here is known, right, to the Wizards of Oz, the people who make Hollywood, the feedback loop, the cycle, and then the connection to Manson and Satanism and the rest of it. I mean, it's really, that movie is really, really out there, and it's an info hazard, by the way. So that movie is a psychological attack on you. You should probably know, but we trust with the interpretive tools that we're giving you out there that you'll break the spell of the Hollywood superculture.
Chapter 27, that's the Mark David Chapman film, is that right?
And that's
Jared Leto. With Jared Leto, who also played the Joker. And then you're talking about the King of Comedy with Robert De Niro, and then he's in this movie with Joaquin Phoenix. So they're using this
playing. So in the Joker, he's playing the talk show host, whereas in the King of Comedy, he plays the schmuck who wants to be the talk show host. So and he's actually become Murray.
Yeah, and this is a way that we can kind of connect the dots and draw the web, is how they're recycling and reusing these actors for certain roles, and you can kind of see a timeline, a bit of a timeline there about how these films could be related, and it's about not so much cherry picking, but just kind of using it as hints as to what roles have these actors played before and how do they relate to the role that they're playing now, and you can kind of glean more information about the general message from there about how this is kind of trying to put another layer to the onion, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think we did a great job tonight, man. Guys, it's been a pleasure, for real. You're welcome back anytime at all, and we can continue this, or we can find other films to talk about, and it'll be fun.
And so did Sean McCann mention you, Does? Is that how you Sean McCann, of course?
Oh yeah, I know Sean McCann.
Yeah, so I've collaborated. You should listen to Sean and I. One of my Monarch episodes is with Sean. It's called Liquid Dreams. I mean, that movie will make the hair stand up. I mean, my analysis. Don't watch the movie, but our analysis will make the hair in the back of your neck stand up. And yeah, Sean is a great occult, esoteric Hollywood analyst for sure.
Yep, for sure, man. I wouldn't be. I might not be doing it in this capacity if it weren't for a lot of the conversations. I talk to Sean almost every day, but he and I have had a very long friendship, and I'm very grateful for it. So shout out Sean McCann. Go over to watch Wake the Dead and really, take in his work. So you guys want to plug anything before we take off?
Yeah, just if people aren't familiar with our stuff, then Psyop-Cinema.com. On Twitter, we're at Cinema Psyop, and Patreon.com/Psyop Cinema for a lot of bonus content, including Brett's Monarch series, which I'm sure your listeners will be very interested in. So people can check out our episodes on Joker, on Chapter 27, on Jared Leto. We've been kind of circling around the vortex of the Joker for a while now. So if people like this conversation, a lot of stuff on our feed where they can find more. So I just hope your audience checks us out.
Nice. I'm gonna try my best to hook you up with Ivan, because I think you guys would hit it off and be able to talk a lot about some movies with him. He's really good. He's really good. He loves this kind of conversation. So I want to make sure that I get you guys, in touch with him. I only have a couple of things to do here before we call it a night, but I wanted to share my usual kind of housekeeping here. And so Black Pill Digest, we're coming back in a couple of weeks. It's funny, you guys mentioned Sean. This is Sean McCann and we do a show once a month. Coming up in March, we're actually going to be doing 2 shows due to a scheduling conflict with the guest that we really want to have for this next one. We're going to be talking about the government indoctrination camps you guys call the public school system. So we're going to be doing that. That's going to be March 4th, I believe. Keep an eye out for that. And then if you think that you can do the content creation, if you think that you could be like myself or the gentleman that I had on tonight, and you have a lot to say and you see how the media is lying to us, so you want to become the true media, well, this is how you can become the true media. Go to howtobecomethitruemedia.com. It's going to be coming up in April. Enrollment opens in April. And it is an online technology skill sharing seminar hosted by Mark Passio of whatonearthishappening.com. This year, it's going to start on July 10th, and it's going to go to December 11th, 2023. Total of 23 classes. There's limited space, so, pay attention and get over there and enroll as soon as enrollment opens up. If he fills enrollment before July 4th, then he'll close it. But if he doesn't, the enrollment session period, whatever, will be running between April 1st and July 4th of this year. So I took this course. It really I benefited a lot from it, and you will too. I guarantee it. If you think that you don't know enough about computers to even take this course, well, I got news for you. He's taking it really from the ground up, and he'll teach you from the ground up everything that you need to know in order to get behind a mic and behind a camera and create media, the true media, to combat the lies and deceit that we are exposed to on a daily basis in this world. So this is where the battlefield is in the modern times. Modern times require modern solutions. So that we got that. And last but certainly not least, the Seed 5 Metamorphosis conference is coming up September 23rd and the 24th of this year, 2023. And it is a free online conference about the occult, esotericism, freedom, history, philosophy, symbolism, and natural law, featuring an all-star lineup of speakers, myself, James Cordiner, Douglas Martin, Nate Kapp, Mark Passio, Chris Jansen, Will Keller, Brandon Martin, Leslie Powers, Brandon Spencer, Patty Lager, Dorian Greens, Colin Smith, Dylan McCormick, Mark Devlin, Corey Androulat, Logan Hart, and Sethicus Boza. And, many of these people I've had on the show. So go back in the history of the show and check out some of their work. Go to onegreatworknetwork.com. And almost every single person on that list is a content creator over there. I can't stress it enough. Go to onegreatworknetwork.com. Support the content creators over there. Support the network over there. This is the hub of where the info war is being why did I call it that? I don't know, but it just came to mind. But this is where we're really, active. But please go to onegreatworknetwork.com and check that out. So we'll have links in the show notes to all that stuff. And I'll make sure to include links to Thomas and Brett's work in the show notes, and make sure that you guys can figure out how to stay on the up and up with what they're doing. They have a really great show called Psyop Cinema. My bad, guys. And I thought I saw Cinema Psyop. That's your Twitter handle, isn't it? So in any case,
Thomas got cut off. He was just saying, yeah, that is the Twitter handle. Correct.
Okay, sweet. Well, anyways, that's it for the show this week. My name is James Cordiner. You can expect to see me in a couple of weeks. I'm going to take a little bit of time off from the show. You'll see me back here at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on March 4th for the next edition of Black Pill Digest, like I said. And I'm going to enjoy my time off. And yeah, that's that. So thank you guys for being here tonight. And I'll catch you guys all on the flip side.
Good night.
Thanks, James. It's been a good conversation. We appreciate it.
Because there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. Not conspiracy.
It's all about control. To them we just cattle, numbers, battling each other while they creeping in the shadows, scheming, plotting, clocking your every move, locked in your mind, brainwashed until it's rocking. Got the population operating as they want them, symbolically mocking them, thinking nothing can stop them. So open your eyes to the lies of the evil, the poison in the minds and the lives of your people. And every time they lead you down a line to deceive you, and by then it's always too late to see through the veil that they hide behind, cause your third eye is blind. Better take a stand, we running out of time. Ain't nobody coming to save us, fuck what you had in mind. Arm yourself with the truth and jump behind the battle line. Can we turn it around? Yeah, it's possible. Divided we'll all fall, but united we're unstoppable. This is for the world, this is for the masses, attached to the strings being pulled by puppet masters. This is for the youth, searching for the proof, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some truth. This is for the ones waking up from the spell, beginning to discover themselves. Yeah, this is for the youth, searching for the truth, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some proof. This is for the world.